Welcome back. We can see the birthday girl. Happy birthday.
Hey.
It's all good. Okay, so we already did our disclaimer about advice and about people in Southern and Northern California getting a hold of you to help with services. And now, Bonnie, you're going to tell us about charter schools and what we need to know.
I am going to tell you about charter schools, and what I do want to tell you is that last week I sent to Shannon a publication from the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, that gets into this charter school question in a really detailed way. So if you want more, there is more. What I think was interesting about this audience person's question is as follows. Charter schools are sort of shrouded in mystery for most of us. I mean, I realize probably I know less because my children are already grown up, but I think there's a lot of room for confusion about what they are and how they work. And the listener's question was basically like, why can't my child get his rights under the IDEA at his charter school? And the short answer to that is that it shouldn't work any differently in the charter school than it does in a regular public school. But because it's a murky area and because there's different ways that charter schools are regulated, historically I've heard people saying things like, well, if you go to a charter school, you're going to lose all your services. I think probably what the reader's dealing with is that the charter school she was dealing with may have been acting extra legally, and so in diving in deeper to all of this, if you want to understand about the funding structure, that's covered in the article, the Department of Ed article, and if you want to understand kind of how allocation of responsibilities work. There's different ways that charter schools can come into being, and that's also covered in the article too. They can charter themselves, they can be chartered by a school district. There's different ways that they can be set up and different ways that they get their money. But they're supposed to be public, and they're supposed to be non-sectarian, and they are supposed to comply with the IDEA. And the reason that she was having trouble in her son's charter school is the reason that you were having trouble in your non-charter school with your child's problem, and that's because school districts don't follow the law. So it's not that there's some different set of rules for charter schools, and when you go through the article and you look at the questions and the answers to the questions, what it really serves as for the listener, I think at this point, is like a little quiz for you about how much you understand your IDEA rights, because if you understand them, the answers are mostly always the same about how IDEA works in the charter school as they are in a regular public school. So I'm not going to get into a lot of the funding and legalities and things like that. If you're dealing with a charter school, though, on behalf of your child, what you need to start with is the charter of the school, so that you can see, who regulates them, where their money comes from, what their policies potentially are. Does that make sense?
Totally. Okay. I never thought before about charter and the fact that there is a charter and that each charter is going to be different. Like that never occurred to me before, Bonnie. Totally makes sense.
This is why I said the whole thing is shrouded in mystery, because there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can become a charter. And obviously there's more conventional, like the brick and mortar charters. And then I don't know whether you've encountered this, Shannon, but sometimes people will actually join a charter that is nowhere near where they live. So there's a lot of people in the homeschooling movements, for example, that put their kids in charter schools to get, like if you're homeschooling but you put your kid in a charter, they might give you a certain amount of speech and language services or OT services every year. So, the question was kind of like how those virtual charters work as opposed to the brick and mortar charter. So, yes, each charter has a charter and bears looking into, and if I had a chance, I would have gotten a sample charter for people to look at, I can still do that if we decide that's helpful. So some definitional stuff, okay? I mean, a charter school means a public school that is created by a developer as a public school, or is adapted by a developer from an existing public school, and is operated under public supervision and direction. And it has to provide a program of elementary or secondary education, or both. It has to be non-sectarian. It has to not charge tuition, and it has to comply with a bunch of federal statutes: the AIDS Discrimination Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Title IX, 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the ADA, Americans with Disabilities, FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and the IDEA. And it admits students on the basis of a lottery if more students apply for admission than get in. So that's a little goodie there for us in terms of like how the admissions process works. So question 5, do children with disabilities who attend charter schools and their parents retain all rights and protections under Part B of the IDEA? Yes. Charter schools are public schools, and therefore children with disabilities who attend charter schools and their parents retain all rights and protections under Part B of the IDEA, just as they would if the child was enrolled in regular public school. So there you go, right? Just as they would if you were enrolled in a regular public school. I'm not going to go into who's responsible for what. That's covered on page 4 of the article. It's hyper-technical. I don't think it's necessary for purposes of giving you the overview. Question 7, what are the responsibilities of a lead educational agency when a charter school is a public school of a lead educational agency? And that basically means that somebody else is a lead educational agency, which could be a public school district or could be the state, has the responsibility for regulating the charter school. And basically, the requirement is that the school provides supplementary and related services on site at the charter school to the same extent that the lead educational agency has such services on the site of its other public schools. So again, here we see there's supposed to be no difference in terms of how IDEA is being implemented. Page 5, they tell you that the charter schools have to engage in proper child find. We've discussed that. Okay, I just lost you, Shannon.
We still have you sound, but
Okay.
we've lost the picture. I know Traven's working on that, but we got the sound.
Should I just
so
keep
let's
going?
keep going.
Okay. So, where was I?
About child find.
Yeah, the charter school has the same responsibilities as far as developing an IEP and providing for the provision of required special education and related services, and providing, in the least restrictive environment, affording eligible children and their parents procedural safeguards and due process rights, and complying with the confidentiality of information requirements. It also goes on to say that just like regular public schools, if the charter school determines that there's a need for a child to have some kind of special education that they don't have in the school, they have a legal obligation to contract out for it. So, I mean, really what you're seeing here is that that things are going wrong, and they're going wrong in the actual implementation of things. It's not something about the structure per se that's discriminatory. Question 12, how do charter schools implement the requirement to provide a free, appropriate public education? Answer. Under IDEA, the vehicle for ensuring the provision of FAPE to all students with disabilities, including charter school students with disabilities, is a properly developed IEP. Accordingly, all children with disabilities in charter schools must receive special education and related services and supplementary aids and services in accordance with the child's IEP. The IEP is a written statement for a child with a disability that is developed, reviewed, and revised in a meeting in accordance with Section 300.320 through 300.324, 34 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 300.320A. Why did I read you all that? Because as part of your special ed quiz and how much you knew, the answer is, If you go to a charter school and you have a disability, just like in any other public school, they have to develop an IEP for you.
And they have to follow it. And I very
Everybody has to follow it, but everybody doesn't follow it, and
Right.
that's why this program exists.
Right, so that you know your rights. It's exactly what you guys
Yes,
are looking at. But I
exactly.
loved the fact that, Bonnie, it included in the sentence that it said that they're entitled to according to their IEP, and it used the word aids in there, that you're entitled to an
Supplementary
aid.
aids and services.
Yep.
Yes.
Because where I just was talking to you today about, we're hearing about places who are saying, oh, we don't do AIDS.
Well, interestingly, this is AIDS as opposed to AIDS. But really what supplementary aids means within the context of the IDEA isn't a one-to-one aid. And so supplementary aids, I believe, refers to accommodations, actually.
Okay, but isn't a one-on-one aid an accommodation?
Well, that's another program, Shannon. I think a one-to-one aid
You've opened
is a
another
service.
can of worms. Oh, okay.
I think a
Interesting.
one-to-one aid is a service.
Okay.
I think the reason for putting that in the accommodations is some sort of attempt to get it off the service page and make it not subject to stay put, which I don't think will work. But I think that's why it's being done like that in some places.
Okay.
Are we going to keep going, or are we out of time?
We've got about 3 more minutes, to be honest.
Okay, well, we're just going to keep rolling.
Okay.
Question 13. What are a charter school's responsibilities for serving a child with a disability once that child is enrolled? Goes on to say you have to have an annual IEP for the child, and you need to make sure the goals are being achieved. You need to revise the IEP as appropriate. You need to, the charter school or the LEA has to make sure that one or both of the parents of a child with a disability are present at the IEP team meeting, and that they have an opportunity, and that the meeting is scheduled early enough to ensure that they have an opportunity to attend, and the meeting must be scheduled at a mutually agreed upon time and place. Now, you guys might not have known this, but when they schedule your IEP, they have to try to work with you to make it at a mutually agreed upon time and place. That's not in the charter school law. That's 34 CFR 300.322A. So that's for those of you that are told that you have to have your meeting at a time and place that's inconvenient. Question 14. Are there limits on the amount or type of special education or related services that can be provided to children with disabilities in a public school? If you're really interested in that question, the short answer is no, and you can go read the rest of it. It goes on to talk about what they have to provide and that they have to implement the child's IEP in the charter school at no cost to the parent. Okay? So that's question 14.
And all of this, the document that Bonnie is reading from, we're putting the link to this on Facebook right now, so it's there for you guys to be going through as well.
Yeah, because I'm not covering all of it because it's
Right.
about 30 pages long.
Right.
Then there's some stuff about what happens if you move into a charter, what happens if they can't get your records, the question about what happens if there's a disagreement and they have to give you prior written notice, which we've talked about before here, correct?
Yes.
Prior written notice, they have to tell you why they're saying yes or no for something you requested, and they have to give you their reasons and the documents they relied on. So that's just like any other situation with an IEP. What happens if the charter school, after the student enters the charter school, they want to change the amount or type of services provided to the student? What's the answer, Shannon? What does the charter school have to do if they want to do that?
Provide prior written notice. No?
No, they have to hold an IEP as well. I think you're
there we
right.
go.
I think they do have to provide prior written notice.
Okay.
But I think they have to have an IEP meeting to change the services.
Okay.
Question 19, what requirements apply to children with disabilities attending charter schools with respect to their participation in extracurricular and non-academic activities? The answer is to the extent that they provide programs or activities, extracurriculars for children without disabilities, or they provide counseling services, athletics, transportation, health services, recreational activities, et cetera, it must also provide these services and activities to children with disabilities.
Okay, that's
Right.
an important one. That's a really
Can't
important
discriminate against people because they have a disability. You can't tell them they can't play on the volleyball team because they have autism.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, some of this stuff should be rather obvious, but since people so routinely break the law, people have questions about it.
Well, and what I'm hearing is that they don't get to change the rule book just because it says charter school.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that would be a good one-sentence summation of what we spent the last 15 minutes talking about.
There you go.
So I think we're probably out of time.
We are out of time.
On page 13, I want to bring your attention to, there is a section about charter schools that are not nearby. So that's covered. There's take a look at we're going to stop. So take a look at page 13. There's some other good stuff for you people on 13. On page 15, a reevaluation for a child in a charter school. Same exact rules as if they were in public school. You can look at that, question 25. Placement and LRE requirements. What if the charter school can't provide FAPE in the current setting? That's page 17. Page 19. Okay, look at this question.
There's goodies on every page, it sounds like.
Yeah, page 19, question 30. What are the responsibilities of a virtual online charter school to ensure the provision of FAPE to children with disabilities? So that's the bulk of it, and you can get into it if you want and read this. I think it's clean and well put together.
Fabulous. We're sharing.
And one other thing.
Yeah.
Page 21, the disciplinary protections of a child with a disability in a charter school are exactly the same as those of kids in a regular public school. The reason I mention that is there's been some instances in which charter schools have insisted that they aren't bound by the IDEA rules concerning discipline, expulsion, and suspension. That just ain't true.
It sounds like instead of taking 31 pages to tell us that charter schools need to uphold the same rules that a public school does, that would have been shorter if they'd made a one-sentence thing saying how it is different, the things they can't do. But we'll work on that another time. We'll work on that another time. Sometimes you need it written out.
I think the audience is left with an operational understanding that IDEA rules apply consistently in a charter school. And if your charter school starts telling you the rules don't apply to them, maybe you can share this document with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that is on our Facebook right now. Bonnie, thank you so much for being with us on your birthday.
Hey, it was one of my presents to myself.
You're the best. And so we appreciate you. And like I said, I'm so glad that you're here with us. It's such a treat for us. And I'm glad to know you.
And I'll see you this weekend.
All right. So excited. And next week you're going to tell us more about how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, and next week I'm going to tell you about injuries in public school.
Okay.
Injuries on the campus.
All right.
All righty.
Until then, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That was the fabulous Bonnie Yates, and what a treat it is to share time with her. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got a couple of different things from our toy guide that we have got to showcase today. So come back. We're going to talk about some puzzles. Stick with us. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.